we have multiple recordings going on here. Okay, great. So, with the quorum present, I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Co-op Budget Committee to order at 6:34 p.m. This is a regular meeting of the Budget Committee with an agenda that was posted more than 24 hours in advance of this meeting. Due to COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic, and in accordance with Governor Sununu's Emergency Order Number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, the board is authorized to meet electronically, the members doing so this evening. So I'll take a moment to introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the members of the Budget Committee who are present in the room at Paul's Brookline Middle School Library tonight, and that's Lauren Rydstrom, Brian Rader, Matt McGuire, and Raul Blanchet. For those that are participating by Zoom, I'll ask the Budget Committee members to identify themselves, where they're taking the meeting, the reason why their attendance is not reasonably practical, which is due to the coronavirus pandemic. Please state if anyone else is present with you and that you can hear the meeting. So we have Cindy Van Conen.
I'm at home. I'm not attending due to COVID restrictions. I can hear the proceeding and I'm alone.
Great, thank you. Tom Enright.
Tom Enright, I'm at home. I'm alone. COVID.
Can you hear us? Great. Let me have one person to unmute. Dave, can you unmute? Dave, can you? Thank you.
Yep. Dave Blinn at home, COVID, all alone.
Great, thank you. Was that everybody? That's everybody from the Budget Committee. We also have Kelly Seeley, our business administrator. Hi, Kelly. And then we have invited several members of the school board to this evening's meeting to discuss elements of the contract. They are participating by Zoom. I will go through the same introduction as your board members. I don't think it's required, but I think just to cover all the bases, if you don't mind, just introducing yourselves and going through the whole kind of COVID protocol for that you're on a Zoom meeting. So we'll start with Holly.
You want me to just say that I'm home alone?
Good, that would be great.
To cover your bases. I gotcha. I'm Holly Drella Babcock, chair of the Co-op School Board. My plan is to observe tonight, really. I am home alone and I can hear the proceedings because of COVID.
Thank you. Krista?
Hi, I'm home due to COVID. I'm in the room by myself, but there's people in my house and I can hear the proceedings.
Great, thank you. Tom Solon?
It's Tom Solon. I'm in a bar down the street with 8 zillion people. Oh, no, I'm home alone due to COVID and I can hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Great. And Liz Brown?
I'm Liz Brown. I am home, not alone, but in a room where I'm reasonably private and my attendance is not reasonably practical due to COVID.
Great, thank you. Okay. Give me 1 second. Just want to pull up our agenda. I think we've covered all the introductory bases. If I could ask everyone to participate with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation. There you go.
At this point, we'll move on to agenda adjustments. I actually have 2 for this evening. One, I'd like to add annual meeting status, which is just to talk a little bit about, and it could actually be part of the school board status that I would like to include as well, just to get a little bit firmer understanding on how we're proceeding with scheduling the annual meeting. So that's why we're going to add that. Give me 1 second. Okay. Appointment of the meeting observer for tonight's meeting is going to be Brian. Oh, no, actually, Tom Enright. That'll be you. And we can move on to approval. We can move on to approval of minutes. The December minutes were distributed, and some track changes were also distributed to the entire budget committee. So at this time, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the December meeting as amended
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
by Raul,
Second.
seconded by Matt. It was louder. Any questions, concerns, issues with the minutes? Okay, since we do have some members participating by Zoom, we'll have a roll call vote. So of those participants on the meeting as well as those in the room. So Lauren, your vote on the approving the meeting minutes from December.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
So Lauren's a yes. Brian,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Raul, Matt is yes. Raul's yes. Darlene Mann, yes. Cindy,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Yes.
great. So that's 800. Thank you. And can move on now to public input. I do see that there are a couple of extra people participating in the meeting. And at this time, if they want to message me in the chat, using the chat feature in Zoom, if they'd like to address the meeting during public input, I will, they can unmute and we can do that.
Before we go any further, what's making the background noise? Is that someone that hasn't muted their device?
Probably.
So maybe we should emphasize a rule that unless you're speaking, please mute your device.
Okay. Did everyone hear Raul? He was on, there's a little bit of background noise. So if you're not, we asked if everybody who's on Zoom could mute so that we can eliminate some of the background noise. That would be great. Okay. See no input being requested from the public. So we'll move on to the first agenda item, which is to discuss the collective bargaining agreements. I'd like to thank the school board members who are participating tonight. We have 2 collective bargaining agreements that are going to come before the legislative body at our annual meeting. One is for the professional staff, one is for the support staff. So at this time, I guess we can start with the professional staff. Tom, I think Tom Solon, you were going to be giving us an overview of the negotiated agreement. I did share a financial summary. Well, both agreements, there were some, one had a PowerPoint presentation, the other was a Word document, as well as the redlined agreements in Hess's case and the both the old and the new contract for HEA's case. So Tom, if you want to address the professional staff agreement, that would be great.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank my colleagues, Liz and Cindy, as well as all the support we got from the administration. And I also want to thank the BudCom for getting us their input early. It was an interesting negotiation session. It was done entirely remotely, which I think had some benefits actually to the process. But to cut to the chase, you have seen the summary of monetary changes, as well as a brief description of some of the implications of those. The rest of the changes to the contract, many of them were what we call housekeeping, such as changing all the dates to be correct for the current period. And there were 2 significant language changes, but they did not produce any, they will not produce any difference in what we actually do. because they were necessary to make the contract align with what we in fact do. Specifically, we changed language around the evaluation process because there was a very elaborate evaluation process spelled out in the contract, but in fact, we were following, and we will continue to follow, processes spelled out in the it's called the master plan, and it's a program filed with the state and updated regularly. So we changed the language to refer to that master plan. And we also modified the information about the schedule, particularly at the middle school, because a new schedule was instituted mid-contract, and it created some conflicts with the actual wording about what the periods were called and when the assignments were made. We have in place currently a sidebar agreement for the current year to facilitate the schedule in place. And we ported that language into the contract so that going forward, we will be continuing to have compliance to the contract by following the schedule we're on. As you can see from all the language around it, it is a 3-year contract. One thing that I want to point out for people who may not be intimately aware of the day-to-day goings on is that we remain one of the few schools in the state that has effectively a complete in-person education option for our students. This is in large part due to an enormous amount of work done between the administration and the staff to create a process and a comfort level that the staff and the students and the administration are all comfortable being there, and happy to report that, to the best of my knowledge, and Holly, chime in if I'm off base on this, but there have been no identified COVID experiences that have been initiated in the school itself. We have had students and staff affected by COVID, but none of it has been tied to transmission that's occurred within the school. We're even having athletics going on, again, with very strict protocols, and to a certain extent, our practices have become templates for other districts in the state to follow. So things have been going comparatively well for our school district in the context of current situations. The negotiations were amicable, but we did not enter them from the same perspective. However, we did come out with a contract that the board feels is fair to the staff and very good for the taxpayers. A 1-year contract was not desired by any party. It's expensive and time consuming, very disruptive to have the contract negotiation process take place. And to do it on an annual basis would be both expensive and very cumbersome. So we had a desire to have a multi-year contract. However, the uncertainty of future years made the board very uncomfortable with making strong monetary commitments. We feel quite comfortable that the numbers we have negotiated are a good deal for our taxpayers, a good deal for our district. I won't speak for how the teachers view those numbers because that's not my place. As you can see in the summary that was provided, a significant portion of our staff is at the top level of the current salary table. And that's a number that, if things continue as expected, will continue to grow. People on the top step only receive the COLA adjustments to their salary. They represent right now over a third of the staff and over 40% of the salary. And as I said, that grows. So the COLA adjustments to the table are very important, and particularly important to the members of the HEA negotiating team who are all on the top step. So that always becomes an area of concern for them. That's pretty much the status of things. As you know, it is, or maybe you don't know, but it is a standardized contract. It is, it was viewed as a critical step to get that 3-year contract. It is something that we recognize there are concerns about that process, but we believe that if there is a fair negotiation occurring, it is a reasonable expectation that, like we do in our elementary districts and many of our other contracts, that we bind ourselves to the conditions of the contract. There have been objections in the past raised about binding future members of the legislative body to monetary commitments. We do that with many things such as bonds and other types of contracts. There is concern that what if the situation changes in the future and we feel that the contract is too rich? And to that, I would say we control the budget, or this budget committee controls the budget. And if they think the expenditure in any year needs to change, it should be addressed through the budget. And that gives the administration the freedom to execute those monetary direction as appropriately as possible within the school district. If instead a total budgetary concern is addressed simply by not approving raises for staff, what happens is you take that control away from the administration and the district, and you now make our most eligible and in some cases valuable staff mobile. That's not in anyone's best interest. So with all these things considered, we did not start out offering a standardized contract, but in the end, to get the money values that we were holding tight on, and to get an agreement for multiple years, that was a step that we agreed to take at the last phase. And at this point, I will try to address any questions you may have about specifics of the contract.
Okay, thanks, Tom. I appreciate the overview. Matt, I see that you have Tom's summary pulled up. Can you just give me the 3-year financial,
Yep.
the 3-year totals? I just don't have
So
them.
it says for year one, Article 8 is 228,316.
Yep.
Year 2 is 294,057.
Okay.
And then year 3 was 330,369.
Okay, great. I just need to have this in
So
front
I
of me.
did have a question on those numbers though.
Yep.
So were those numbers based on the whole contract, including any healthcare type changes? Because it looks like as far as healthcare goes, the same percentages applied as the previous contract. So these numbers would be all inclusive of everything, not just the increase in salary.
They include salary, FICA, and NHRS, but they do not include the healthcare, because the healthcare is already built into the budget and is not in any way tied to the actual salary paid.
So the budget itself includes the GMR increase. And Tom, you didn't negotiate or change any of the current conditions for healthcare, and so therefore, since there's no incremental effect due to the contract, the basic GMR change is estimated and included with the budget itself.
Okay, yeah, because all the percentages look like they stay the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, there were no changes to the
That is correct.
contribution.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Ronald.
The NHRS would probably be a variable over the next 3 years?
Well, for the next 2 years, the rates are the same.
But on the third one, there would be a variable, right?
Yeah, so Kelly,
So in theory, assuming that NHRS goes a lot higher, say, because the contract is standardized, does that mean that whatever is contained within that number is what it is, and then the difference would have to be made up by how?
I would say, Kelly, you use the current assumption for NHRS to continue into the third year.
We did, and then the budget would have to take care of whatever increase happens.
On top of that.
It would seem to me that if it is what it is, then if there is an increase, then tough luck. You know, that would have to, the cost may have to be borne by the HEA, by the association, rather than the school.
No, the state doesn't allow that, Raul. The state dictates a portion to the staff and a portion to the districts. That's the way the law is set up.
So there is a relationship, an impact of some organization so that it is impacting those estimates. In other words,
Standardized or not, if in year 3 there is an increase to NHRS, both staff and district will see an increased contribution. And that, as you probably know, that doesn't go to the people that are paying it. It's going to pay the people who have already retired, and making up for the fact that in the administration of NHRS years ago, they did a really poor job of investing, and they didn't hold true to meeting their goals.
I mean, we also use the current year census to project out 3 years, and we know there are going to be changes to that census over 3 years. So we'll have retirees, we'll have attrition, we'll bring people in at higher salaries, we'll bring people in at lower salaries. So, I mean, it's using.
so that was the best estimate, I guess.
It's the best calculation of what the contract will cost over that, given the information we have now.
Yeah, we checked into whether it was legitimate to speculate in that third year, and the advice we got was that we should not, because we only can work with what we know.
So Tom, thank you for negotiating this, you and the team. Did you say that the increase in the NHRS was in that 228 figure?
Yes.
So doesn't that mean we're counting it twice then in our?
No, because what we're including in this figure is the increase. So basically, we're saying
from year 0, from current year to year 1, what's in there, that was already known and was budgeted for for FY 2022. And then for year 3, for year 2 and year 3, we assumed the same increased rates. So they all have the new rate that takes effect next year. We knew that before we started negotiations.
But it's the new rate on the incremental amount. So what the budget does is basically holds everybody where they are today. What this additional amount does is say we raise them a step. So if someone goes from making 40,000 to 45,000, this amount for the first year counts the 5,000 and the FICA and NHRS related to it.
Correct. Another way of looking at it is we take the total amount in any given year and just compare it to in the first year what was budgeted for FY22, and in future years it's that same column for the previous year. So, but Darlene's explanation is accurate that the additional NHRS rate is applied to the increased pay amount for the year.
Okay, so we're showing a $300,000 increase in NHRS, right?
In the budget?
Yeah. Just been 1820 and 2120.
Just give me, I don't have the budget up in front of me right now. Just give me 1 second.
I'm just going back to the preliminary guidance sheet.
Okay, I just want to pull up the.
Darlene, do you understand Lauren's question?
I'm just trying to sync up with the number that Lauren's referring to, that's all.
The
And I-
1.8 million?
And I just didn't have it in front of me.
That's what I'm
Thank you,
looking
sir.
So the budget increase, the budget salary line for FY '22
Yeah.
includes the district's contribution to NHRS at the new rate and at the salaries that the staff is in the current year.
Yeah.
So what the warrant article will include is the increased salary, the increased federal tax on that increased salary, and the additional NHRS contribution for that increased salary.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense, Jim, but then where does the $300,000 come from between last year's number and the number we're adding back in under the guidance? $300,000.
That's on the baseline. That's like taking the basic level of everyone's.
That's this year's salary level.
It's basically this year's salary level at a higher rate for NHRS
Okay,
because
all
the
right, I
rates.
got it. Okay, all right, thank you very
Yeah.
much, appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions? Tom, just quickly, can you share a little bit about why the healthcare benefit contribution percentages weren't addressed at all? So we've had several contracts.
Yeah, I can. There were multiple factors. Probably first and foremost is that if we had increased the cost portion that we're asking the staff to pay, that's essentially a pay cut, but it is not a pay cut that is uniform. It depends on what plans they have taken. But looking at who's negotiating, we would be faced with a significantly different demand for pay increase. The second factor is that from a, call it an emotional standpoint, to start asking them to consider new healthcare concerns or costs during the current pandemic was viewed to be a very disruptive process. Although we all acknowledged on both sides that we want to take into consideration ways of reducing healthcare costs across the board. So there is a general consensus, at least within the co-op, that we want to take another cut at options for healthcare in general for the district. And I brought it up at the last SAU meeting that I wanted to be done. I suggested be done at the entire SAU level, much as we did a few years back with our benefits working group. So the options, the amount of money that we would have potentially saved by cost shifting with the ratios would have, in our estimate, been more than offset with demands for increased pay so that people did not go backwards. Again, you're dealing with staff who are at the top of their scale, and the raises that they get in the COLA level, especially the first year, of this contract are not a lot of money on any individual basis. So we chose not to make that a sticking point and went instead for keeping total salary costs as low as possible.
And just to reiterate how those salary costs played out over the 3-year contract, it was a 0.5% increase to the table COLA adjustment for year 1. And that meant anyone on the top step of the various lanes, the bachelor's and master's lanes, anyone on the top step only gets the 0.5%.
0.75.
The first year?
I think so. Isn't it 0.75? I think 0.75, 1.5, 1.75, I think are the numbers.
0.75, my mistake. The second year was 1.5. And the
That's
third
the
year.
salary table.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a change to the salary table. So the salary table moved 0.75 in the first year, 1.5 in the second year, and 1.75 in the third year. And anyone on the top step gets only those increases. Everyone else is getting the step increase as they increment through the table. But there was significant compression of what the changes were amongst the steps. That was completed by the last contract, correct, Tom?
Yes.
So that's part of the file that I shared with everyone that showed kind of how those steps equalized over the 3-year period.
Was there any comparison of how other school systems, what these numbers reflect now, comparing our new numbers with other schools?
Did you hear Raul's question? Raul,
we have information, old information. The information does not get filed real time. We have anecdotal information which comes from people who are making moves or considering making moves. We are competitive, but we remain significantly below the top payers. In some cases, as much as 15 or 20% below some of the top payers. We also have less benefits, there are many of our competitive districts that are giving 0 employee contribution requirements to healthcare for all plans. We only do it for single plans. So we are attracting people, but we are not attracting them based on salary. We attract them based on working conditions, on the logistics and demographics of our school, the environment created by our administration. But we don't play quite in the same level as the districts that are recruiting heavily, and they tend to be some of the larger districts. What happens is as a district falls behind, they resort to high pay to try and get staff in. We try not to get caught up in that game. Within the SAU, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. We don't compete directly with them for most of our staff because of the fact that it's different grade levels, but we try to maintain a certain level of equity between experience levels and between years, well, experience as years and also as in credentials, but we don't match up exactly with either of the other districts in the SAU.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else have any questions for Tom on the HEA agreement?
I just had a question. When I looked at the numbers of the full-time equivalents and the steps where they are at the table, I think right now we have like 40% of the people at the very end of the table. So typically, how many of those retire within the next year, within the next 3 years, within the next 5 years, if you look at history? Is there any information on that?
I mean, we could go back and look at, say, the last 5 years to see the level and the number of retirees. Looking into the next budget, we have no retirees identified. Is that correct?
Right.
That's correct, Kelly, right? So,
In an average year, though, we get 2 to 4 turnovers in an average year, sometimes more. We went through a period recently when we dropped down about early part of this current contract. We had some larger numbers of retirees. Next year is really an unknown because we haven't had official notifications in our district, but on a national level, the changed teaching environment with the requirements for remote and things of that nature have polarized a lot of communities, staff, so that some of the people who have been considering retirement decide to make that move. I think a lot will hinge on what is predicted for our school environment come September. If this is just my personal opinion, I think if you see that it's likely they are going to have a significant amount of remote instruction come September, you'll see a group who may choose to not want to go that way. The other thing to consider, Raul, which sort of plays into it, is the way the NHRS system works is that your last 3 years of work determine what you get for your retirement. So it plays into people's equations. If they think there's a big jump coming, they may hang on. If it's a relatively minor increase, there's less incentive to stay on just to bump their salary calculation. And that's why it's pretty important to try and keep things stable.
Okay, thank you very much.
okay, great. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Krista? Kelly, could you share Chris's PowerPoint presentation?
You got to make me the host first.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, tell me if you see.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, and I have to leave it like that. It's not working right if I try to put it in a slideshow, so.
That's fine.
You just move to the next slide, Kelly, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thank you. So HESA and the board met and we negotiated in good faith. I want to thank my colleagues, Holly Babcock and Kate Stoll. And I also want to thank the administrators, Kelly and Bob, who worked very tirelessly with us. The HESA team was Ann Robinson, Lisa Henney, and Lori Hayes. You can switch to the next one, please. The board goals were to come up with a contract that allows the district to hire qualified staff at competitive wages. And 3 years ago, we kind of focused on the paras because we were struggling with the hiring of paras and keeping them. So we've kind of focused on how we were paying them and they were getting the rates they deserved based on what they were doing. And so we really changed the contract a lot for them. And what we have found even 3 years ago and before that is we really struggle to hire custodians. In our district and the surrounding districts, for example, Milford and Nashua, they have their own union and they're paid a lot more money than our custodians. And because we're all in one HESA contract, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So we wanted to try to find a way that we could certainly help all of the staff in HESA, but we could kind of focus a little bit on the custodians and try to help figure out a way to allow them at least to be able to hire them at a more competitive wage. We wanted to keep the insurance caps to allow budgeting, and we certainly wanted to talk about the cost versus the benefit for the taxpayers. We didn't want to be too generous in terms of everything that's been happening with the pandemic. You can switch to the next one, Kel. So what we did was we changed Appendix A, and we took custodians and moved them up categories. So a first year starting custodian is now in category 2, maintenance worker, grounds maintenance moved to category 3. Building maintenance shift supervisor moved to category 4, and category 5 remain the same. I mean, an example, if right now this year in Brookline, a starting custodian makes $14.99 per hour. In Hollis, it's $11.42, and in the co-op, it's $11.86. Starting, if we, the taxpayers support this contract, starting in 2021, a starting custodian will make $13.23. Still under Brookline, but better. Move to, yeah, there we go. So how we changed the wages, the custodial shift, the cost came, the custodial category shift, on step was increased 2% and off step was increased 2.5%. And then up to year 1, and the category shifts in year 1 are maintained going forward. We looked at a number of ways to try to change this, and we were held back by costs for a number of our ideas, but also in addition to cost, we thought, well, we were starting to fix it, but then we got into situations where in year 2 and 3, we were going to have a number of people on the step table making more than people off the step table, and that wouldn't be good for anyone. So the wage breakdown, in year 1, on the step 2% increase, you'll see the increase. Overall percentage increase looks about 7%. That's because of the custodial change. But we're talking in 7%, high number, and I know that will come back at us from, I think taxpayers will be upset with that number, and I understand that. But if you put it into perspective, we're talking about $1 to $1.50 increase per hour for these employees. So a 7% increase, on a $13 an hour income is not a significant increase. So it has to be looked at overall. So you can see where the wage breakdown comes with the offset being 2.5%. Next one, and our insurance changes. We changed the caps for the single and 2-person and family, and you can see the increase 50 for single and 2-person, and the costs that it gives us. Currently, we have no one on a family plan. And if we change, you can see the current district and employee costs, and that the single employees, 23 of them, do not pay any out of pocket costs. And the 7 2-person pay $297 per month. If you look at the future, you can see that it's going to change due to if the GMR truly is at 10.9, you can see that they start paying a little bit more. So even though we did increase the caps, they are starting to pay out of pocket increase. Next page, we did offer a flexible spending account, which clearly doesn't have any financial impact, but we thought was a nice benefit to offer our employees. So the next one, this is the total warrant amount, and we know that year 1 is a hefty one, and we understand that. That's more than we've ever done in HESA, but we also understood that we really are struggling to pay custodians. We're struggling to get them and keep them. And if ever there was a year that this custodians were worth their weight in gold, I think this was the year. And I think going forward, that will be the case. I think we'll be in better situation next year, but we still are going to have a lot of situations where these custodians are working extremely hard. And so we felt it was important to do it this year. We didn't think we could put it off the next year. And I certainly understand it's a tough year for a lot of people with this pandemic. It is completely understood and not lost on any of us, but we also felt that it was an important time to move forward and not put our district in situations where we did not have enough custodians. We have been in a situation where we've been short in the middle school for almost 2 years. So we wanted to try to solve the problem the best we could. So thank you. Any questions?
A quick question about the dental piece of the health care benefits. So there was no change to the caps that are associated with dental coverage?
No, we did not change those.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone have any?
Other questions?
Go ahead, Ron.
Is the 3-year contract harmonized, number one? And number two, if at the national level, if they pass the minimum $15 an hour pay increase, pay level, how would that change this contract?
Did you hear?
Yes, I did. No, it is not standardized, and we would have to work with Kelly on that. I don't know how that, I mean, it would clearly affect us if that is for both part-time and full-time. I'm not sure how that would work, but yes, that would have an effect on us. And the contract is not standardized. I don't know if you heard me.
Thank you very much.
Can I just chime in there? Darlene, can you hear me?
Or go ahead, Holly.
I did take a look at the salary table just for next year in terms of the $15 pay change. And our first step, category 1, it's about 8 steps before you get to $15 an hour. So you're looking at quite a lot of people. And then category 2, it's about 6 steps and just keep going down the line. It goes drop. So it's a diagonal, and I'd say I don't know how many people impacts, but it would be it would definitely be a pretty big change, because we're still at like $12 an hour in that very first category. So
Also keep in mind that the proposed changes are moving to $15 an hour by 2025. So this would be beyond the time, we don't even know what the change in the law would be. So there's some time in order to adapt to that.
I think it would be wise to at least have a rough estimate, say, and then see if we have any reserves or how we will go through the process of having to pay for it if we have to do it out of cycle. At least we will not be caught off guard.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
And I was saying that it might be worthwhile to do the notional exercise of coming up with an initial estimate and figuring out how we would pay for some mandatory increase if it came to happen. In other words, just to get an order of magnitude and think through the scenario, just to have, so we will not be surprised.
That's a good point.
I'd like to say, as far as the school board coming together and getting these budgets together, these numbers that I'm hearing now, and I know the administration is talking $15 an hour and this concern about getting to that point, and I believe it is 2025, probably at the earliest. I think especially on the janitorial staff, they're making less than the kids at Dunkin' Donuts. It's absurd. So I think we should be well over the 15 before the presidency decides that's what we should be doing. They shouldn't, their daughters shouldn't be making more than them down at Dunkin's. It's absurd, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
I agree. Krista, what was last year's warrant for the support staff warrant article? The number?
The one last year, I believe, was 82,000.
Okay, so these, for what you've accomplished, I don't find these that onerous.
Thank you.
I agree with that too.
Okay, great,
I agree with Lauren.
Thank you.
great. Well, thank you. Kelly, thank you. Can you switch the host back?
Yep.
Great, so I'll give everybody one last shot to ask any questions on either contract while the board members are still here present and participating.
I just want to make a point that I appreciate that all this was done on time and schedule, and it seems like a lot of work went into coming up with the original.
Yes,
Yeah,
thanks,
problem.
Raul. We do appreciate the attention to meeting the deadline for us to be able to review this before Tuesday's public hearing, get a good understanding. Seeing the redlined or the ratified agreements themselves was really helpful. And I think maybe that went a long way to maybe us not having quite as many questions as we might normally have had, because that information was available to us ahead of time. So it is greatly appreciated. Especially the efforts it took to do it all over Zoom during this window that we're in right now. So,
Darlene, could you just tell us when will the Budget Committee be taking positions on the warrant articles?
after the public hearing on Tuesday?
Tuesday of next week?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Tom, did you have any concern over the loading of this contract on the back end? I guess I'm being troubled by the cost in the third year. It all being loaded there instead of more evenly distributed.
Actually, it sort of went the other way, Tom. It was uniformly high, and with what the teachers wanted. And as we backed them away from the cliff, they were willing to back away further for the current year. And so the middle year was sort of a compromise. The short answer to your question is we were aware of it. I don't know if concern's the right answer. I think we would have been concerned if it were larger numbers, but the difference between the 1.5% and the 1.75% due strictly to that is I think it was about $15,000. The bigger change comes just from the fact that we've got clumps of people who are moving up to the top step in those last years, in that third year. So we are aware of it, but it was what we could get.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's that third year for me, that's a pretty big number.
Yeah, I don't want to go
I'm
into
not saying
too much into the weeds, but we were at a number for the first year and then the same number for the second and third year, and we did not we were not willing to do that. We came down and we were looking at that for a non-San Bernard's contract. They were not willing to take a non-San Bernard's contract for multiple years.
Yeah.
So we negotiated down the early year. We were able to negotiate down the early years in exchange for San Bernardization.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You taught me well.
Huh.
You and Dan.
I would like to again thank all the board members who participated this evening. You're more than willing, and we would love to have you stay, but if you want to free up the rest of your evening, just appreciate your participation, and we'll see you all at the public hearing.
Thank you for all that you guys have done. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you and good night. We really appreciate your help.
Good night, everybody.
All right.
Night.
Thank you.
Give everybody a second. Okay, so we, as Tom brought up, the public hearing, when we'll take a position on the contracts as well as all of the budget and the other articles in the warrant would be at Tuesday's public hearing. I did share with everyone last year's, I want to make sure everybody, oh, hold on a minute.
The PowerPoint?
I can't minimize when I'm recording. I did share with everyone last year's PowerPoint, and it's a standard format that I've been, oh, do I not have it over here? Let's see if I can find it. Everything, so it's a little bit easier.
If we're gonna have a Zoom meeting next week, the public hearing, would it be possible to change the template so that at least some of those tables are not so washed out? Because some of those colors, when light blue and all that, don't show up.
Yeah, I can
And,
address that. Just let me try to find
No big deal, but
the presentation.
if we're gonna have a public hearing and maybe a lot of people participating.
That'd be a change.
Just give me a second.
So are we gonna do the same format as this then for the public hearing?
Yes, this is going to be the same format. Okay, all of my, my computer is attached to a lot of things. So anyway, Matt, I can make Matt the host.
I'm not on Zoom yet.
You're not on Zoom. Okay.
I can try again on Zoom.
So we might want to practice this before Tuesday, in terms of the main computer and the backup, just to make
Yeah,
sure we
I
don't
think
have any
somebody
catastrophe.
else will run we'll have the presentation set up separately and the Zoom and all of that stuff. So, but the format for the public hearing has been relatively consistent for a while. It's a summary of the articles, pie chart of the distribution. I talk about the student enrollment, the split between, how the enrollment splits between Hollis and Brookline, the revenue and aid components, and then I think we start to go article by article and, read those into the record, talk about the probably the major increases and decreases for the budget, a little background on the SAU budget, each of the contracts.
Should Tom Sullivan and
Yeah, I'll ask Tom and Krista again
Krista to provide input or at
to
least,
provide, yep, they'll provide input for the CBAs and
are we gonna have to include the extra warrant articles that were proposed or submitted?
the petition warrant articles have to hold their own public hearings that have to be noticed accordingly.
Okay,
And I believe they have to be held in Hollis and in Brookline. Is that still correct, Kelly? Yes. So we will not hear, those petition warrant articles won't be part of the public hearing, but I think the tax impact on the warrant was submitted earlier, and I think that one is posted as the same night as our public hearing. So the one that came in first, which asked for tax impacts to be printed on the warrant, will be heard as its own public hearing on Tuesday. The other three have to have a different
So my
schedule.
question is, do we have to mention it? Do we have to at least make,
I
we don't have to do that. We don't have to even acknowledge that it's going on.
don't believe so, no.
And Darlene, I can say that the public hearing for those warrant articles will be happening on the same night as the school board meeting during their school board.
Okay, perfect. So they meet the third Wednesday of February, so it'll be then. Great, thank you, Kelly, appreciate that. So I don't know if there are any, are you in, Matt? Are you waiting for me? You're in, I'm sorry. I did, thank you. Just run through the presentation really quickly.
to show me.
Oh, now I have to make you.
So next week's meeting will be here, also starting at 6:30 or 6 o'clock? or-
We'll have it, I might even back it up to 6:15. I think, I don't know what time, the agenda was just, the joint agenda was just distributed, this week, and I'll just see what that said. It'll be probably like, yes, at 6:30 timeframe, because that's when the, public hearing is scheduled for. Matt, I need to make you the host. Wait, I'm gonna make you a co-host. Let's see if that works. Beautiful, great. So if you could just flip through. Right, so this would be updated for, in the order as it's presented on the draft warrant that Kelly shared. Oh, I see what you mean, Raul, about the colors getting washed out on the screen. So this will have the two contracts, the operating budget, the SAU budget. Will work some of the, I think there are two articles related to the trust fund. There's the facilities fund, special education. We will not have the special education trust fund. The contingency, you can, and then there are a few others that are more of the housekeeping with acceptance of grant money and things like that. But this would be a summary of the monetary articles. Okay, if you can go to the next one. Pie chart that I was talking about next. Student enrollment. So this is the composite of both towns together. So it'll be updated, and we'll add FY26 so that we have 5 years of estimates. Next chart would do the distribution, anticipated distribution out to FY26. Oh, the summary and the impact of the local tax effort. Include that because tax effort is less than the budget itself. Revenue and state aid. I am thinking of adding a chart after this because there are some substantive changes to revenue and state aid that are the elimination of some one-time aid funding to Brookline. I'll talk a little bit later about some legislative initiatives that could affect that by the time we vote, so we'll see. But I think it's just worth just as a reminder of what would be driving some of the significant changes we'll be seeing on the state aid side. And on the revenue side, the most significant change is going to be that we've returned a large sum in the unreserved fund balance last year, which is not included in the estimate for the current.
Should we have at least something about COVID-19 funds that were given to the district and how that was used, or that was?
Not for the public hearing. I think it's probably something and that affects more of this year than next year at this point.
Okay.
And so.
All right.
And it's going to offset additional costs. So I think,
At least I would have an answer to the question that somebody may ask about how much funding and when did the district receive it and what do we do with it? At least some people may have that.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be
curiosity on that.
Maybe that'd be more appropriate for the school board presentation. They can go over the year in review.
At an annual meeting, because again,
Yeah,
it's a
the-
public hearing. This is intended to introduce the articles, tell
Okay.
people what's going to be, what they'll be voting on, get their input, and for us to make a determination and a recommendation. So.
Okay.
Okay.
I think without that, if Brookline doesn't get any type of grant back, that's a huge impact to Brookline. So I think there definitely needs to be
Yeah.
some,
Yes.
talking points for that.
Yes. I'm working on that. I'm trying to. I'm not exactly sure yet what that chart will look like, but yes, it has a significant impact, and I think it something will come in after
Yeah,
this.
I think
slide.
this year a lot of people saw their taxes go down a little bit, and then when this hits, it's gonna.
It was actually a pretty good reduction to Brookline's tax rate in total.
Yep.
And since it's not there, the tax rate is going to go up. So, okay. Next. Oh, the summary of apportionment. This just talks about what, again, estimated apportionment would be based on the ADM and EV compositions and how tax effort will end up being split.
Let's bond everything.
Okay. And again, a reminder, this is last year's presentation. I can't stress that enough. This is last year's presentation, not this year's, not the presentation for FY22. Formats will be similar, numbers will be different. Yeah, this is just a summary of the year-over-year change, identifying the amount that gets apportioned, and then what is the resulting tax effort. Next. And then this splits and identifies the impacts by town in total. Okay, next. Then we close the background information, open the public hearing, and then it's an article by article. We read the article, discuss the amounts, identify the amount, and open the floor. Can you go to the next one? And the next one. Right. So this one, we would start with the HEA agreement. Okay, next. This is just article language. And we include the estimated tax impacts, whatever supporting documentation the school board wants for each of the contracts. And then the operating budget. Yep, and the major increases and decreases. So we'll have that. We'll move into the SAU budget. I think, Kelly, are there two articles for the expendable trust? Because one sets up the revolving and.
Yes, one is to basically get rid of this expendable trust, and the other one is to create the revolving trust, or not trust, but revolving fund.
Yeah, okay.
What would be the order of that though?
I'm not sure. I just don't have the warrant.
You know, like say we do this one first, get rid of this, but then the other one doesn't pass.
Is one contingent on the, is the revolving contingent on, is the wording of the setting up the revolving fund contingent on closing the other fund?
No, I think the first one, I don't know, I'll have to look at that as well. I don't remember if they were contingent or not. But
okay.
Legal approved them, so I.
Okay. The facilities trust, do I have a summary after this? Yes, so we'll talk about how we anticipate utilizing the funds. We won't have a special education trust article this year. The contingency, which is the same. And I think when we did this, I think we included those petition articles, but we didn't speak to them at the time because or they might have. I don't think we spoke to them at the time because they had later public hearing dates, but it was just to kind of identify that they'd be part of the warrant. Close the public hearing, and then we run through as a budget committee, taking our positions on the articles. So aside from adding a chart to talk about the revenue and aid changes, are there any other recommendations for information you think needs to be shared at the public hearing?
I think there's probably a lot of questions about the remote impact, you know, what the costs are for the remote learning and you know, how that's impacting things in a positive or negative way. Yeah, so it can, you know, suspect some questions could come up.
I think the only way we can address that for the FY22 budget is to say how the district anticipates moving forward from an Article 2 or an article, whatever the number is, operating budget perspective, operationally, we're just assuming an in-person environment, and any changes and adaptations they need to make, they need to do within the budget that's being proposed. So there isn't any, so the answer would be there isn't anything directly related to remote learning that's included in the budget. So, okay. Anything else? Well, if anyone thinks of anything, let me know, because I'll be working on updating all the content.
If you want to share drafts with anything, just to get.
Oh, I will. I definitely will.
Don't hesitate to send it.
You will all receive probably more than one version of it.
Okay, good.
So, I wanted to take a minute to talk about, well, actually, I'm going to shift the order. I'm going to put in the annual meeting update at this point and ask Cindy if where we stand or where the school board stands on the annual meeting. So we have the public hearing scheduled for next week. We'll have the additional public hearings at your next school board meeting. Is that the meeting where you'll be deciding the date of our annual meeting, or are we really just looking, or when are we looking to have an annual meeting? I guess I should just leave it at that.
Yes, we discussed it at this last meeting. Nobody's really interested in the whole virtual public hearing, so we're running with the schedule that we have as if we are running and having our meeting on March 2nd. But the anticipation is that date will be moved because we would prefer to have an in-person meeting. The question will be whether it will be April, which is what we're kind of looking at, possibly because of the fact that the contracts, have to be given out. Well, actually, it doesn't have to be given out, but it's preferred to do it by April 15th. So we would like to know what budget we have prior to that, but it will kind of depend on the COVID situation. But it would probably be an in-person outdoor meeting is what we're shooting for.
With coats.
Hmm?
With coats then.
With coats, yes.
With coats.
Jackets and heaters, yes.
We just feel very strongly that, last year we did one without any kind of input and from the public, and we would really like to have that opportunity to have the public come. And at this point, this is the way we're going to try to go. If we end up having to do the exact same thing that we did last year, then that's what we'll have to do. There's a bill in the Senate. I think the House passed it, and the Senate, I'm not sure if they've passed it yet, saying that the, town and school meetings can be after the March dates. I don't know, Kelly may have more on that since she's deals with all the different boards, or may have heard something more about that. But Drew had mentioned it, I think, in our meeting at the BudCom last time, and he also mentioned it at the last school board meeting.
Okay.
Cindy, so there have been various conversations over the last year about potentially having a bond issue to cover some of the capitalizing some of the big maintenance items. Is that pretty well been taken over by COVID and everything else?
It has still been discussed a little bit, but we were hoping to get through this one, I think. And I know that there was Hollis was looking at possibly doing a bond this year. That was another reason that we didn't think that it was a good idea for this year. If theirs gets put off, I'm not sure where we'll look at next year. But I think that it's something, that everybody agrees that may be the best way to address all of these issues that have been pushed down the road for so long.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Cindy, since you have the floor, are there any other updates from the last school board meeting? Anything else?
Just because a lot of people there don't have people in the schools. I'm not sure if you're aware that Tim Grisone has been named the high school principal, and we are in search of a middle school principal.
Yeah, I did see that on that.
Which we're all very excited for.
Yeah, I think Tim will do a fine job, although Rick will be missed. So
Yeah, very much. Yes.
So are you in, is there a timeframe for the middle school search that's going on now? It's just kind of going through the normal process that the position's been posted and,
Yeah, I think that it was just posted maybe one day last week after the board, voted to have Tim go up to the high school. I think that the pool for the high school, I think people are afraid and not sure that they want to jump right now with everything that's going on. So I don't think that there was a lot in the pool when we went out to for the high school. So we'll see what happens at the middle school.
okay. Great. The last thing I wanted to bring, does anyone have any other questions for Cindy?
Actually, one quick question. Regarding the turf field and the policy for fees for rental, for people to use it to generate some revenue, what's the status of what's going on with that?
They were working on that in policy. I don't think that it's come before the full board yet, but they did have it as a working, I don't remember, Kelly, I don't know if you remember, because it was a financial thing, you might have seen it, but I don't remember we haven't discussed it in the last few meetings. We've been trying to do the class rank policy, which has taken a lot more time than anybody anticipated. It went for a 4th reading. And there was a couple of other like cleanup ones that we needed to do, but I don't think that one's been established completely yet. I'll ask Holly and get back with you, Matt.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy, I know this isn't your bailiwick, but why does the Hollis, what's the Hollis district doing? They've had bonds up the yin yang. Why would they be looking for another one? Or is it the SAU?
Yeah, the SAU, but the Hollis is,
Okay.
Hollis owns it, so.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So it would be coming, it would be taking from the same parties, basically.
And
Yeah,
just to let you, just to let you know that it is not on the warrant this year.
Okay.
No, I know. It's a question of next year competing. I mean, districts can't fight each other for bonds.
Right.
Thank you.
And at the time that we thought about doing this next year, we thought theirs was going to go forward this year. But
Yeah.
Sure. But that's been a big change.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Appreciate the updates. The last item I think I have for tonight is I just wanted to make a brief legislative update. I have my notes are shared on the screen, but I wanted to just mention a couple of bills that are wending their way through the process. House Bill 71 is relative to school district emergency special meetings. So this is identifying what would not be allowed as a special meeting, just kind of clarifying you could not hold a special meeting and consider it an emergency meeting if you were addressing a warrant article that was voted down at a regular meeting, a contract that was voted down at a regular meeting, including a contract modified after the regular meeting, or any time in the budget, any item in the budget that was not approved at the regular meeting. So just a brief kind of way to describe emergency special meetings. I have no way of knowing if these are going to end up seeing their way to a vote. This is just where we stand right now. House Bill 415, which was talking about information, how information is shared and how draft budgets and revised versions need to be made available in full line item detail in CSV and PDF formats for easy viewing and use by common spreadsheet programs. So that's the language that gets added to just, you have to have and provide CSV and PDF formats. House Bill 454, which talks about providing detail and information to the budget committee as requested. I'm not sure what the impetus for this was. Kelly and the school board do a great job with providing us with information. Maybe that may not be the case in other districts. But the specific language that's added to the RSA is in bold and italics as each item of anticipated revenue, appropriation and revenue at such time and in such detail as the budget committee shall fix. So clearly budget committees maybe feel like they're not getting the information that they need.
They're not getting
Conjecture on my part. House Bill 459 prohibits the transfer of funds within an adopted budget to a general ledger line item in a budget that contains an entry of $0. So you basically can't move the budget into a line where there's zero money budgeted. House Bill 484 is relative to budget committee recommendations on warrant articles. It, if passed, would take effect 60 days after passage. It adds a new paragraph to RSA 32 under 32(5) VB that says a budget committee or advisory budget committee shall provide a recommendation printed in the town, school district, or village district warrant next to the affected warrant article only when the warrant article submitted by the governing body or by petition includes an appropriation or expenditure. So that would limit budget committee recommendations to purely to financial articles. I believe the ones I just talked about, yeah, those are all referred to municipal and the county government committee. So is this one, I'm sorry.
So what is the logic behind only limiting the positions of the members to warrant articles that have financial implications?
I would say you should look up House Bill 484, look at the people who are proposing it and direct your question to them, because I have no idea.
Okay.
House Bill
You
370.
notice how that just kind of rolled off her tongue? She was ready for
Yeah.
that.
And no, that's true for any of these. If you understand what the impetus is, that the New Hampshire legislature, you can put in these house numbers and you can see who's proposing them and you can direct your inquiry to any of them.
But I'm just trying to generically think through the logic here. What is the motivation in terms of?
I guess that, I don't know. I don't want to put.
What, I'm sorry, what's that House Bill number?
484.
You want to know who put it in?
Well, the point here is that
No, you're
apparently
wrong.
this has been submitted twice, and twice has been, I guess, have been
Well-
legal positions on twice, and.
Well, no, this is the, I believe
This
that's
is
the
different?
first time that's been submitted as an actual bill.
To the state level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
House Bill 374 is relative to the official ballot referendum form of town meetings. This basically is requiring a vote on SB2 to be within established procedures on a ballot that would allow for absentee voting at polling places and within the regular polling hours of your like normal town elections. Right now, I believe that based on a recent legislation that was passed within the last year or two, said that the vote on SB2, since it would come at an annual meeting, it would be before towns or school districts that have an annual meeting format, that the vote has to take place within the annual meeting format and not go to the ballot. This changes it and makes it be voted in an official ballot so that you can have the absentee ballots and within the normal polling hours and things like that.
And what was the bill number for that one?
That one is HB 374. There is an omnibus bill, Part 4 amends RSA 33(8), and this is related to bonds and notes, and basically changes. Right now, the threshold to pass bonds or notes in an SB2 community is a 3/5 majority. It would change it to a 2/3 majority. So right now, the bond is 2/3 at an annual meeting form of government. And so this bill would change it to 2/3 at an SB2 as well. It is part of an omnibus bill. There was some capital reserve fund language that you can include lease purchase agreements. You can pay for lease purchase agreements through capital reserve funds. And there were two other parts that were I didn't download. So those were the two more relevant pieces of that. That was Senate Bill 87. And this one is very interesting. House Bill 623. A hearing is set for it next week. This one states for fiscal years 22 and 23, the total education grant to each municipality shall not be less than the amount of such grant in the prior year.
Where that came from?
That was, I believe, one representative who was marked as an independent. I'm not sure. I don't remember who that was. So I would like to make sure I understood the definition of education grant, but by my understanding, it would be the full amount, in which case for FY22, which is the year we're looking at, if the grant is the full grant, if it restores it back to what it was last year, which is this current year, that means Brookline would keep that disparity aid funding away. A lot of other communities received a lot of different.
And that would stay forever, or that
Well, no, it would stay for FY22 and 23.
So that would have to be submitted yearly, I guess, something like that.
Something like that. There are several things affecting the adequacy grant calculations for FY22, which include lower free and reduced meal counts, students that are getting free and reduced meals. It doesn't affect our community as much as it affects other communities. But it has a significant effect in those other communities. So I think this is a way to address that as well, because as a result of the adequacy estimates that were put out, the total amount of adequacy paid across the state is $36 million lower because of these changes. Aid, like disparity aid that isn't being paid anymore, changes to free and reduced lunches. And it's an issue for a lot of communities. A lot of communities saw significant reductions in their adequacy aid. So this is one way to address it. There might be others, but these were the ones that I was able to find, kind of doing the scan. Brian, you're really good at looking up legislation, but those were the ones that kind of jumped out at me at this point. So we'll keep watching those. Those are the, right now sitting in committee, that one that I mentioned, it does have a public hearing scheduled. There are differences with some of them that are implemented immediately, others that are implemented 60 days after passage, things like that. But those are the ones I think we're just watching to see where they go over the next several months. So,
Darlene,
mm-hmm.
I have an answer for Matt's question. It's in legal. So they've been working on that policy and the lawyer has it right now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great.
Sure.
Okay, we're through our agenda items. I can reiterate the agenda. There is a posted agenda that posts a joint meeting of the budget committee, but it mentions like the school board going into recess and not the budget committee. So I'm going to just follow up with another agenda notice to make sure we're covered for the public hearing next week, which is Tuesday night here. I'll firm up the way.
The agenda has 6:30. I pulled the agenda. It does have 6:30.
We'll start at 6:30. We'll make sure that the flow is there, the Zoom works, someone's sharing their screen. We'll have it all set up and ready to go. So, Tom, I think you were the process observer this evening, so I'll appreciate your input on how you felt the process went.
A model meeting. Thank you very much for the Zoom component to it. And with the chair we have and the business administrator we have, all our meetings are model meetings. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. And at 8:03 PM, I will take a motion to adjourn
I'll
from
make a motion to
Raul,
adjourn.
seconded by Brian. All those in favor by roll call. Lauren,
Aye.
Brian,
Yes.
Aye.
Nat,
Yes.
Raul, Tom,
Yes.
Cindy,
Yes.
Dave,
Yep.
Carleen votes yes. Thank you all. We'll see you Tuesday night.
Right. Good night,
Bye.
everybody.
Good night.